Hello friends, today we will be talking about Maratha administration. And while talking about Maratha administration, what we will focus on in this episode is the administration set up by Shivaji, okay? And we should remember the background that by the height of Aurangzeb's powers, Marathas had already emerged as the counterpoint to Mughal authority. And their power, Maratha power under Shivaji, was not just based upon the highly mobile and efficient army that they commanded, but it was also based upon the structure, administrative structure, and the revenue structure that was put in place by Shivaji and his ministers. All right. And while talking about Maratha administration, let us first subdivide the Maratha territories into two parts. Okay, the two parts being the Swarajya. What the Swarajya essentially means are those territories which were directly governed by the Maratha state, okay, and then there was the loosely administered territories, okay. So Swarajya and loosely administered territories. Loosely administered territories were mostly those territories which were pillaged and raided, and also those territories from which revenue was collected, maybe with the authority of the ruling state of those territories, or maybe with the authority or with the with the help of the zamindari that administered those territories, but sometimes even through the modality of loot and pillage, okay. But there was revenue collection from these territories also, even though these territories were left out of the administrative purview, okay. So this is what we have to remember about the territorial aspect. And then of course let us look into the central administration. Now remember, when we are playing games, sometimes we use cheats and cheat codes. To remember central administration also, why not devise certain cheat codes in order to correctly explain the sequence of ministers that we need to remember, okay. Let's do it this way: P, M, S, W, C, D, N, N, P, okay. Now let's just fill it up, okay. Peshwa, Majumdar, Senapati. He is also known as Sare Naubat, by the way. Then Wake, Navis. Then this would be the Chitnis, Dabir. Then this would be the Nyayadhis, and of course the Pandit Rao. Now remember, together these 8 officials which fill up the central administrative posts, okay, these 8 officials together, they are known as the Ashtapradhans. Okay, together they are known as Ashtapradhans. But however, we should remember, even though they are clubbed together in this term, but they do not work as a council of ministers. Their functions are individual and they report individually to the ruler, okay. They are not a council of ministers. That you have to remember. It is an important point. And then let us look at their individual responsibilities. The Peshwa, general administration and finances. Majumdar, he accounts, okay, accounting. Senapati, of course, commander of troops, and he looks after the army and the affairs of the army. Wake Navis, he is the spy master. Remember, when we were doing Mughal administration also, Wake Navis is the post for the spy master, same here. And then there is the Chitnis. He works with the Maratha ruler when it comes to correspondences, okay, when it comes to the coming and the movement of correspondence, that is the movement of correspondence from the various officers or correspondences to various ministers, okay. The Chitnis controls the movement of correspondences. Dabir, he is the foreign minister, the minister who is responsible for relationship with foreign dignitaries and also foreign states, okay. And then there is the Nyayadhis. This post is related to administration of justice. And then Pandit Rao, the religious officer and also officer in charge of religious grants, okay. So central administration, fairly simple. Remember to use the mnemonic device that I already told you. First write down the the sequence of initials, okay, and then fill up those initials. That this you can employ this for other for other topics also. So try to employ this mnemonic device, and then let us move forward. While moving forward, we have talked about central administration. Now let us go into the revenue administration. Remember, while talking about the administrative aspect of any state, these two aspects and also the provincial administration, of course it is non-existent in during the period of Shivaji, because provinces and the supra-regional authority is mainly focused upon revenue collection, and that, as I have told you, through pillage and through loot, okay, and through collection of Chauth and Sardeshmukhi, which we are coming to right now, okay. So what about revenue administration? Now revenue administration during Shivaji's period, revenue administration was based upon the formula that had already been in place in the Vijayanagar kingdom, in the Bahmani, sorry, not the Bahmani kingdom, the Golconda and Bijapuri kingdoms, okay. So it was worked upon in the same manner, okay, the manner that was devised by Malik Ambar. He was a minister of the Vijayanagar state, okay. He was a Siddhi, black Siddhi minister of the Vijayanagar state, also a pioneer of guerrilla warfare. We will be talking about him later, but the revenue administrative system devised by Malik Ambar was the one which was put in place, which was worked upon by Shivaji also. The revenue demand was 2/5 of the produce, okay. So these are the two basic points that you have to remember, but beyond that, let us look at the revenue administration, and let us look at the fact that entire revenue administrative system, the setup, was based upon Shivaji's relationship with the zamindari class. In the absence of a strong central authority, the zamindari classes filled up by castes such as the Deshmukhs and the Patils, okay, Kulkarnis. These are mostly the classes that were dealing with the revenue administrative aspect of revenue collection. Actually, these castes were responsible for collection of revenue from agrarian societies, okay, and their relationship, okay, with the state, in the absence of a strong centralized authority, their relationship had deteriorated to the extent that the Deshmukhs, Patils, Kulkarnis, they were beginning to keep their own army of retainers. They were starting to build their own forts, and they were trying to become, you see, localized magnates, okay, localized magnates and localized potentates of power, okay, and that kind of authority, when it comes to a collision with the central authority, that kind of authority is always, there is always an attempt to subjugate this kind of localized authority. So Shivaji did the same. He tried to subjugate these local authorities by trying to fix revenue, okay, fix revenue with the village headman. Shivaji tried to fix revenue with the village headman. Now, many modern scholars try to assert that Shivaji tried to do away with the zamindari class, okay, and Shivaji tried to do away with the zamindari system, but his efforts at curbing the power of the zamindari was not just economical in nature, but also it had administrative relationship, okay, it had an administrative connotation also, because such kind of local authorities, as I have told you, cannot be tolerated by a rising central authority. Therefore, his act of trying to fix revenue with village headmen and not the zamindari, and zamindari were also, the zamindari elements were also tried to the zamindari elements were also subjugated through warfare also. Therefore, there was a complete subjugation of the zamindari element, okay, during Shivaji's reign. And another aspect of revenue administration is Chauth and Sardeshmukhi. Remember when I told when I was talking about the territorial aspect, we talked about the Swarajya and the loosely administered territories. Swarajya, you can gain revenue in the stipulated form, that is 2/5, and then you have dealt with the zamindari classes, and you are now collecting revenue directly or through the village headman. So now what about the loosely administered territories? You collect Chaut and Sardeshmukhi. Chaut is 1/4 of the revenue, Sardeshmukhi is 10%. Okay, 10% of the revenue that is accrued to the zamindari classes. Okay, remember that the zamindari classes had traditionally exercised this right of collecting 1/4 of the total revenue, okay, and keeping it with them, and also the right of collecting 10% of the total revenue. These were the cesses that were traditionally exacted by the zamindari classes wherever they held power. All right, so Shivaji tried to subsume their power, okay, sorry, not subsume, assume their power and subjugate them by claiming Chaut and Sardeshmukhi. Look at the term itself, Sardeshmukhi, Sar and Deshmukh, okay, because he is trying to be the head of the Deshmukh, he is trying to exert his authority upon the Deshmukh classes, okay, therefore the term Sardeshmukhi, therefore the appropriation of the Chaut tax, okay, from wherever the administration was loosely, wherever the administration was loosely based, wherever administration was loose, he exacted Chaut and Sardeshmukhi. This is another very important aspect of the revenue administration. It also accrued a lot of revenue to the treasury, the central treasury, okay. So you have to remember these 2 points also. Now as far as the administration structure and as far as the revenue administration are concerned, we are fairly clear about that. What about the army? The army consisted of cavalry and infantry. Before we go on to discuss cavalry and infantry, let me also tell you that Shivaji was one of the very few Indian rulers who tried to build up a navy also. His assumption of appropriation of port towns display the fact that he was trying to build up a navy, and he was trying to recruit the naval classes, not just classes actually, naval castes, those castes which were dependent upon the seas, castes like Bhandaris, okay. He was trying to recruit them into his navy. So this is an important point about Shivaji's army. He was one of the very few Indian rulers who tried to create his own navy. It will also be replicated by Tipu Sultan, by the way. Let us proceed into cavalry and infantry. Cavalry and infantry, fairly simple. The cavalry soldiers were known as Burgis. Infantry soldiers were known as Naiks. Okay. These Burgis and Naiks were in turn commanded by Havaldars, Jamaldars, and these in turn reported to the Hazaris, okay. So the Hazaris themselves had different categories like Ek Hazari, Panch Hazari, but together all of them reported to the Senapati or the Sar Naubat, okay, the supreme commander of the navy, cavalry and infantry. So this was a highly mobile force. Mobile force meant for the purpose of raiding, okay, and also adept at guerrilla warfare. So Shivaji's army was a highly organized and highly mobile force commanded by the Sare Naubat and consisting of this officiating members, okay. So this you have to remember about Shivaji's army. And then of course there are certain elements of the army that again needs to be talked about, and that is the Silehdari element, okay. Why is the Silehdari element important? Because the Silehdari were mercenary elements of the army, okay. They were not part of the regular army, but they were mercenary, mercenaries attached to the Maratha army and commanded by Silehdars. They joined in the Maratha exploits exclusively for loot and plunder. Because as I told you, it was an army meant for these activities. It was an army meant to collect Chaut and Sardeshmukhi. It was an army meant to subjugate loosely administered territories, and therefore the necessity of this element, the element of siledari, which is attached to the regular army, a part of the army which supplemented the regular army just for the purpose of loot and plunder, commanded by siledars. So this is Maratha administration in brief during Shivaji's period. In the next episode, we will deal with the Maratha administration during the period of the Peshwas, okay, during the administration of the Peshwas. So with that, I would like to take your leave for today. I hope you will be studying hard. I hope you will be working hard and do good. Thank you.